Welcome into the CFF Plainsman from Sleepers to Studs. We got you covered. Well, I appreciate everybody tuning in, watching this first episode I have here. I'm kind of going solo right now. Kind of my first solo episode, I guess you can put it that way, in a way. A little bit about me. I guess you guys could have maybe seen me with another platform, Auto Rhythm Fantasy Sports. It's still there. It's just kind of not really on hiatus right now, but I wanted to kind of take a different step into the way we look at college fantasy football a little bit. College fantasy football is, I mean, it's still kind of getting there. I mean, I've been kind of sitting back here and looking around contemplating on things because I mean, a lot of times there isn't a lot of like resources out there or great information and whatnot. I mean, when we do mock drafts and where to take this person and whatnot, back in my mind, it was just something I've came up with, thought about is, just kind of doing a website. It's one of those things that's I want to bring more information to the college realm when we do college fantasy football. More informations, I know that a lot of people are doing Devy leagues and stuff like that. I mean, that's kind of really not my thing. It seems really cool. A lot of people, taking a lot of these freshmen and then they transition into their college or not their college, but their NFL teams and stuff like that. So, I guess for me myself, I've actually just wanted more of the information, now what can we do with the information now kind of thing. Um, that's the way I'm looking at college fantasy football. I mean, I'm kind of taking it year to year, but also I want to put in, a lot of rookies, or I want to say rookies, I should say freshmen, as we would call them, rookies. Um, kind of see where they fall into where a lot of our teams, I wouldn't say teams, I guess, a lot of oh, where we might draft them later on. If a team's ascending or descending, where are the fantasy points coming from in a way? Can this person, especially, in a deeper league that you guys are playing or a smaller league, if he's a void or not, just waiver wire gem for that week, it just I want to put stats out there that we can kind of take a look at to actually determine, it should be actually take a risk on this guy or not kind of thing. And that's the way I want to take a look at it. And that's how I want to kind of present that to you, to a lot of you guys too, as well. Um, but being this is kind of my first episode, I don't know, I'm just taking a leap here and just kind of going with everything. And I would appreciate if you guys would subscribe to the channel, follow me over there on X on the CFF Plainsman, and then if you guys do like this, like and share. And if you guys want to, make it some comments down there, in the after this video is posted too as well. Um, I guess that would be the most main thing too, because I want to put out there a good place for everybody to to kind of, I wouldn't say a good place, a a good resource for everybody. So if you guys think there's something needs to be fine tuned or anything like that, that would be the most thing I kind of want to is just some feedback on the website too as well. I'm trying to find a little bit more prompt in place to kind of work on this as far as information and whatnot. So it's kind of more currently updated, weekly or bi-weekly, or just so that it's the fresh information we can absorb. So I mean, been working on this for a little while, but now it's kind of more of the back end of things, is trying to making sure having the correct information for everybody, as far as going forward in season or out of season kind of thing. So that'd be the most main part of it too as well. um Thereby ado, let's roll on over to what my vision is, I guess, far as when it comes to college fantasy football. When you first look at the website here, I mean, your edge in college fantasy football, and that's kind of one what I want to give you guys. We got, a top 100, you know, especially guys that are Well, let's back up here. Top 100 live flips, fancy stats, conferences, draft kit. A draft kit too is kind of something I've kind of wanted to put out there too, but that part is a work in progress too as well. As you can see here, we got the off season and in season stuff here. A lot of the off season stuff, far as like recruits, I have like just put in this like 2027 commitment, so that we can kind of base stuff off of guys that are already coming or committing, or guys that might be flipping and stuff like that too as well. Um, Sometimes it's actually hard to actually, like, keep up with all the guys that are transferring, so I'm like, "Hey, why not have a transfer pool as well?" The leaderboard, kinda in-season stuff too as well. I think I'm gonna try to work on that as far as the stats and stuff like that, and the coaching portal, especially if guys, coaches are leaving, going to different teams, so I want that out there far as another good resource for a lot of us as well. Um but far as the homepage here, let's go back to the homepage here. Um, Draft kits. I do like doing a little bit betting. So I mean, I kind of like doing a lot of prop bets when it comes to like college fantasy football. So something I'm kind of want to put out there too as well. Something trying to kind of look at as well. I know a lot of us don't do a lot of the betting, but we like doing like more of the statistical side of things. So I don't know, I thought maybe this might be something we could probably take a look at. you know, I'm gonna try to put something out there eventually here. Training weeks, this is kind of your homepage here. Training weeks, I am trying to do a little bit more refined when it comes to like, maybe the spring stuff here. So of having more of the older stuff here. Then you can, most of these are clickable too as well. Coaches and top 100. The college fantasy stats, these are all clickable, and you can go and check any of these out. I did update the Pac-12, so these are all in pretty much order for 5 years to current. You know, the biggest risers and fallers. That's kind of the thing I was trying to do with the trending, and so when it comes to fantasy points, which guy is kind of up there and out there. Um, you can view player trends here too as well. So this is out there as well. So you can look at all the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. Um, but yeah, that's kind of the rankings things, but that just kind of goes towards more the trending stuff there. And then we got the coaching updates. So that's kind of the other thing too that takes you over to the coaching side of things, where Lane Kiffin leaving Old Miss, he's go to LSU. Matt Campbell, Penn State. James Franklin was a huge one. He's heading over to Virginia. Can he change? Can Franklin change around the Virginia Tech program at all? So I mean, there is going to be a lot of fun things that's coming this fall that I like, anyways. And then we got a little bit of the summer workouts and fallouts and stuff like that. So freshman watches, transfer portal stuff here. So I mean, each of these are kind of clickable. I wouldn't say freshman watch for Dante Moore. He's not really a freshman anymore, but these are the things that need to be fine tuned as far as having fresh content out there for you guys to take a look at. Um, but that's another thing here. Well, let's go up here. Recruits. This is gonna be a little bit more fine-tuned. I'm gonna get rid of all the seniors, juniors, and so the 2025 sophomores, so actually it's gonna be more of the sophomores, or not sophomore, but freshman stuff here. So each of these, what my thoughts were is actually, so we can kind of take a look at what are some of the freshmen coming in, so and then we can also look at these towards the conferences, how many commitments have they had, or recruits from for each of these conferences, and then the positional breakdown, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, kind of things, so you can kind of see which ones are a little bit more trending, which ones are a little bit more less. If there's not a lot of tight ends, that's the other thing too, is we don't, I think, is a trending thing where we don't see a whole lot of actual like top 5 tight ends that are actually putting up almost 1,000 yards per season. There might be that one athletic guy that might be putting up a little bit more of those 1,000 yards kind of thing during the season, and and whatnot. And those are the things I've kind of seen kind of playing these last couple of years of college fantasy football is, it's very hard to actually find, tight ends that are really just jumping off the board right now that might get you like one or two, touchdowns in a game. But it down here it shows the commitments, it gives you an idea. You can actually click on if you want individual filter or conferences. You can look at Big 12. You can kind of see here which guys are going where. But yeah, this is I'm going to be working on this a little bit more. So here's freshmen for this come up in year for the Big 12, so you can kind of get an idea quarterbacks who are committed to each of these teams right now. So this is a little aspect that I kind of like to see myself. I thought it'd be kind of useful for a lot of us to think about which freshmen are coming in because I know that can be all over the board, and why not kind of have this in one place for all of the guys who play fantasy football. And then we got the 2027 commits, kind of the same thing, but right now these guys are, they're kind of committed but not committed. In my aspect, these guys are still in high school and whatnot. They're like, well, next thing you know, they might flip and go somewhere else, you know, which where the flips comes in. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe I should just have a more of a pull down, 2027 kind of thing here because this shows I think kind of more like the last year, kind of like Bryce Underwood. He was at LSU, back to went over to Michigan kind of thing. So I think I might work on that a little bit more too as well while I am. And it looks like it actually did do a little bit 2026, but other than that, this will be have to be a little bit more fine tuned just to get better accuracy when it comes to guys too as well. Um, but that gives you a little explanation of the flips, top 100 right now, recruits right now. But best freshman, Legway was a freshman last year. I think Jeremiah Smith wasn't really a freshman this last year. So this was his second year. So he's going into the third year. So a lot of these got a little be fine tuned as far as like the freshman aspects of things. So and that's why I kind of want to put it out there as far as what the prospects are coming in and whatnot. So we all get that idea of everything. Um, Transfer portals. I mean, this is the one where a lot of us are like, there's so much movement when it comes to the transfer portal, keeping track of who went where and whatnot. So now with this here, you can go to QBs. You can actually check that out. You can go by conferences. You can change to see who moved, if anybody moved. If somebody went to the Sun Belt, Joseph Colton, who was at Old Domain, went to Wisconsin. And he's trending, positive to where he's going to Wisconsin. So I mean, there's a little so I like this part. You can kind of look at where they're going to where they're coming from and whatnot, which team they left to, which team they transferred to, and then possible fantasy points, aspects of things too as well. And then the leaderboard, I think this was more the guys who transferred, that played last year. Byron Brown was pretty much the top guy last year when it came to fantasy points in an aspect. So a lot of these guys are, this will give you more of the top guys that were in the fantasy aspect of things. Joseph Colton, he did fairly well. So you can kind of see where a lot of these guys, Messmaker, I believe, was second overall. So I think this part here needs to be a little bit more fine tuned when it comes to things. Because I know Messmaker was pretty well second below freaking Byron Brown or above him when it came to fantasy points. But this will give you a little bit more of an idea where how when we take a look at especially drafts too. This could be a good resource. You'd be like, oh, Byron Brown, even though he transferred, he put up 360 some odd fantasy points. So this was a good resource for you guys to take a look at too, kind of browse around at. Coaching portal, I kind of mentioned that here a little bit earlier. Lane Kiffin, head coach, it kind of gives you a fancy inspect. He's kind of, that air raid system, so a little bit more QB wide receivers, so it might take a little bit lack on the, running back situation, so maybe look at running backs a little bit later in your drafts or anything like that. But this gives you a good pinpoint of, what we can take a look at, especially John Summerall, going from Florida to Tulane. So I mean, we can look at that a little bit too, and maybe if Tulane ends up being a little bit better, we can maybe see, especially if your guys are playing in G5 leagues, you know, um, who knows, maybe a wide receiver might be ended up trending a little bit more in a G5 league. But this gives you a little bit more of an idea. Who knows? Hey, Kyle Whittingham, is Bryce Underwood going to look a little bit better this season than he had when he first started. And then you know I like to know, if he's going to progress to be a little bit more of a fantasy, maybe a top 10, or I should say a top 15 or top 10, quarterback that we all want for this upcoming season. Hopefully maybe he's putting up 23 fantasy points a game. So that part I kind of want to kind of help us to kind of put a spec on to, do we want to draft Bryce Underwood, with the coaching changes and stuff like that. So this is kind of a small aspect here. Not a bad thing, Brian Hartline to USF. I wish Byron would have stayed there. I think that would have helped his aspects of maybe being drafted. Who knows? But you know, being a G5 team, you know that's always a fun program to actually always watch. But there's quite a few of them, quite a few changes here, a lot of guys going to different places and whatnot, so this can kind of help you determine, like, hey, I want to draft this guy from this guy, with the coaching changes, maybe be good or bad. And that's where, the in-season stuff come to, when it comes to like the in-season coaching, which is, I'll kind of jump to here real quick. You got over season review, schemes, fancy impact, and the coordinators. You kind of give an idea on that. So I mean, this is just all you can go over here and actually change everything. If you want to look at Pac-12, here's all the Pac-12 teams. Looks like it needed to be a. I'll have to make sure to get that a little bit more updated with the rest of the teams there, even though Utah is not in there anymore, or Colorado. So this will have to be, I'll have to update this a little bit more. But it kind of gives you an idea. We can look at maybe, with, you know, Tosh being there, a little bit more of, especially if you're playing, in just certain leagues, or if you're only playing in like a Pac-12 league, or, sometimes that happens too when you're playing in, especially on fan tracks, that if you're just playing on certain different, you can only do play in this conference, and like, well, you can take a look at, you know, QBs and wide receivers are trending more here compared to the maybe the running back situation. Um, and that's one of the things I've kind of want to worked on. I kind of want to put together, far as sort of um, a lot of the fancy points. Like, hey, what's that's why I want to do with when it comes to the fancy points is putting that out there a little bit more, where we can actually be like, hey, we can actually maybe target more of the Colorado freaking um, players, or Utah. So this is kind of more of a, I'm trying to pinpoint more, where the fantasy points are coming from. And that's kind of the whole thing too of me kind of putting this out there is I want to, put a target on more where we want to draft our players. Um, but then we got the schemes. So if you want to look at, the schemes and stuff like that, what they kind of do. Um, I think they should have put these in. I know with the bigger, say like the SEE, so it kind of looks like schemes, schematics, usually they had that up there. Um, I'm not sure why they're not showing it now, but it gives you a little bit more which ones are trending, especially when you're looking at the schemes. Um, oh, there we go. Sorry, because I'm just a moron and I can't read my own computer. Yeah, these, so it should gives you more. Here's 8 teams that are doing more of the spread styles. Here's 5 teams a little bit more of the pro style, and here's more teams that for the up tempo, more a little bit more of the air raid. So these are all just broken down too, so we can look at if you want to focus on getting more wide receivers that have more chances of actually producing more fancy points for you. Especially when those guys are getting those long bombs, 80-yard touchdowns kind of thing. This is where you can kind of look at some of these things here too as well. Um, so that's my fault for not actually taking a look at this here a little bit on the side because I was like, wait a minute, it should be showing something, but so that's my fault there. Um, and then you can also bounce around too. You can actually bounce around to here's the Big 12, shows you the spreads, air raids, it's spread pro, which is probably why, LJ Martin is actually pretty good here. And BYU, their wide receivers, really not, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of their wide receivers are pretty much like the wide receiver two, wide receiver three kind of guys. I mean, they might have a wide receiver one, but they're not putting up like, thousand some odd yards in a season. They're kind of their average 800, 700 some yard kind of wide receivers, with, the closer, you know, red zone target and touchdowns aspects. So, which you can see why the running backs a little bit more trending here in that aspect. So you get a little bit more of an idea with these, um, which are green and whatnot. And there's a little bit of defense schemes in here too. Um, don't really trend toward, playing, defensive guys in college fantasy football, kind of thing. But there are some defensive schemes in here. So anybody that does play, a little bit, I don't know, maybe this might help too a little bit too with, maybe I should do defensive fantasy points so we can kind of focus on maybe um, finding defense that are trending, teams that are not really well. Maybe I'll do something like that too, as well as putting defenses in here, so we can actually, during the season, find those trending, defenses that are putting up, 20 some odd points a game that actually might help you win your week that week. Um, I did think about that, but maybe that's something I should do. These are kind of your fantasy impacts. You can look at wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, and whatnot. Um, so these are, guys are trending a little bit more toward the running backs. You can kind of give an idea of like, okay, it might be 15 points a game, give or take in there. So, and these on the draft side too, as well, you can kind of look at which ones are, draftable, which ones maybe you should stay away for as far as drafting and whatnot, these are all, it gives you kind of a green, red kind of aspect for those. And then coordinator spotlights, just doing Big 12 here, it kinda gives you an idea, with the offensive coordinator kind of thing too as well. So, I mean, it's a lot of information, but I wanna give you guys a lot of information to when it comes to college fantasy football to kind of be able to target, certain, teams and conferences and stuff like that, which is why I have, at the beginning here, the homepage here, I got, the conference fancy stats, and these are, from 5 years to current, so you're looking at that whole conference as a whole here, that whole conference puts up, almost 4,000 some fancy points in a year, so we can take a look at that as well. Um, but we'll get into that here in just 1 second here. Let's head on over there now. Um, So we pretty much got fancy points, offensive metrics, and pretty much kind of like a, you know, breakdown of teams that actually they're all ranked pretty much for what teams are putting up like kind of point wise, fantasy points wise, it gives you your, the kind of the total plays, what they're kind of averaging, in a season, compared to the rush and pass, which one's a little bit more rush heavy, which teams are a little bit more pass heavy, kind of give or take, Oregon here is almost 50-50. So this kind of gives you an idea too as well. Um, then we have offensive metrics, so that's kind of almost kind of like the team leaderboards here. Pull this on down here. So it gives you an idea, what they, average game plays and whatnot. So, I mean, you can see what they average Um, so I think I have to do a little bit work on this too. But we all want the how much t- how much time and offense is actually on the field. How many plays are doing each drive, in that freaking, as you can say, that quarter or whatever it is, and how many. So you can take a look at that too as well. So these kind of the offensive metrics and stuff like that. So you can take a look at those. There's a lot of them you can kind of take a look at, and we got group of five too as well. So you can kind of see what's trending and what's not trending. Just to kind of for us to get a better pinpoint of where we want to draft people. And that's the whole point of me putting this out there, because when you're looking, and I know just a couple of years ago, I was just like, I want to find people that I can target and be able to get off the waiver wire, with team, that maybe someone didn't even notice to even pick him up, and that guy's could be trending that week, and he's a guy that's maybe 1% rostered, ended up being a guy who is 23, 24% rostered compared to guys that you did draft, and he's putting up 100 some odd yard games every week, kind of thing. And that's where we get, the top fantasy conference right now is pretty much the SCE, possible Big 12. You can probably target, a lot of Big 12, wide receivers, and the Sun Belt, is kind of trending upwards there too as well. But when we take a look at this, you can see, the quarterbacks per games, running backs per games, wide receivers per games. So this is just an average total of all the teams in that conference. And then once you go to this tab over here, you can actually pull this down. Then you can kind of see more of the individual stats. So as a whole, if it shows, and then putting up about 3,000 some odd, fantasy points, you know, in a year, which, breaks down to, total fantasy point or total fantasy touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, and passing touchdowns. So this is the 5-year average, so this gives you a little bit more of an aspect of where we can draft people, where we can stay away from people. Um, but yeah, I thought this was kind of more of a handy deal, because I'm like, I want to know where guys are coming from, where we can pick and choose what we might want. And that's what I kind of was kind of looking at here with all these here too as well. But you can kind of see what's trending, which one's not trending. It does. This one here actually has all the Pac-12 teams in here, so you can see all the Boise State, Texas, Washington, Oregon, Utah. So all these guys are trending in here too as well. So it gives you an idea. So I had to make changes to have Boise State and all them other changed out of their other conferences. And one of my favorite conferences is gonna be this year is gonna be the Mountain West, only because, you know, North Dakota State has jumped up in this conference. So, and I know it was weird because I actually did a mock draft here the other day, and I ended up taking a running back from North Dakota State. I can't tell you who he was offhand because I don't have that. Well, actually, I could. Let's see here real quick. I'll tell you who I actually took offhand here in just 1 second. I had to pull up that mock draft here. While that is loading, but this gives you a good idea, of conferences, trending freaking points where we can actually take a look at guys, especially when you're, in a G5 league, which, this is could be very helpful to actually see which guys we can maybe draft, um, which conference is trending more in rushing or pass touchdowns and whatnot. So I kind of like this aspect here a little bit. Um, let's see here. These are the rankings. So this ones are kind of more like a fantasy rankings. Um, so this is kind of more your preseason rankings, completed seasons, um, and whatnot. So this, I thought this one was okay. This one, it's not the stats. Okay, these are more your kind of your fantasy rankings. That was from last year, which is kind of I'll have to work on this a little bit. I think seems a little confusing. I know a lot of people are like, confusing. Why would you put something like this out here if you know it's not right? But like kind of fancy rankings, it's kind of an algorithm I was kind of working on putting together. This is where, maybe a lot of you guys can, if you got any thoughts or opinions, you can put them down in the comments once this video is uploaded too as well. But just goes back from each year to year. I went from 2021, kind of a value, kind of a fancy value ranking in a way, so that's what kind of what these are a little bit. But then there's also still working on this, trying to get some players' names up or photos up in here too as well. Um, the other thing too is let me go to one of the newer ones here. Rankings, preseason rankings. So once it pops up here. So it kind of gives you production, usage, consistency, so its consistency is pretty well, good in that aspect. So there's a lot of usage here called, college metrics, matrix, or metrics, whatever you want to call it. And then and it's kind of a game log for, how many targets he had. I'm sure this was a little bit more than that, more than likely, but gives you an idea. What we kind of take a look at here. I think I don't know if last year's in there. Nope. I'll have to work on that then. Um, Overview kind of gives you a little, a little bit here, especially guys are that would be kind of going into the NFL too as well. Um, I wouldn't say he's compared to Rashad Bateman. He's probably a little bit better than Rashad Bateman. Um, but yeah, I'll have to work on this a little bit. But and it gives you a little bit of projections. His targets from 119, so it might bump up to 146. So it gives you a little bit more of an aspect there. Um, Pretty much, I wouldn't say I'm trying to kind of. I kind of want something that's, especially when it comes to college, where we can kind of say he's somebody you want on your team. But then, especially for us guys that, from the NFL side of things, is this guy actually going to be a good value, especially when it comes to us drafting in our rookie drafts, for 2027. I mean, I would think he'd be a starter. I mean, you never know when he gets in NFL. He could be a Pro Bowler, just never know. But I mean, kid is damn good. That's for damn sure. Fancy stats here. You guys can take a look at that here too, and you can click on, you know, um, their each of these little tabs up here. Fancy stats was from last year. He had 1,600 some odd. Um, Receiving yards, that's averaged out to 349, 398 fantasy points. Um, Game log, you can kind of tell that. Targets gives you an idea his catch rate, how often he is, kind of targeted maybe in the red zone, deep balls and stuff like that. So yeah, a little bit of that, and then we got some of the team stuff here too as well. When you take a look at this too as well. Um, so a lot of this is still a work in progress. So I'm just trying to work on, guys that are actually, you know, for that season and whatnot, not past seasons and stuff like that. Um, and then the other thing too, I'm kind of working on is kind of the upcoming schedule. Kind of give you an idea. Could just be a cakewalk, Norfolk, most definitely. With somewhat of a maybe projection too as well. That's right there. So all weeks. This says sit, but I mean, you never know. I mean, it's very possible you could have a better outcome. He might not have a whole lot of fancy points, maybe, 50 for a touchdown. So I mean, where we all might need is, especially when it comes to our college fantasy playoffs too, as well. So this is a little something else too, as well out there. Tier rankings. I think that's just all kind of a more of a kind of gives you an idea what a wide receiver 1, 2, and 3 could be. It kind of gives you a little benchmark there when it comes to him. He does see, 70 plus receptions in that aspect. But this is kind of your CSB stats. Kind of give you guys a little bit of a tour of everything. Working on teams too as well, and this needs to be a little bit more updated because, I want to kind of put something out there as far as like the team stuff. We can look at SEE. which guys are putting out fancy points, because I know a lot of us, trying to keep notes and stuff like that when it comes to, fancy players, which guys actually have some fancy points, and this is where I kind of, try to have some of the rookies in there too as well. Kind of give an overall value on guys that we want to draft. So it kind of more of like a team breakdown. I might try to change this up too a little bit. So I tried working on it so it's updated, with the current players kind of coming in and whatnot. So, but yeah, we got Power of Five, Group of Five, so you can take a look at that. But yeah, if you guys have any comments or anything like that, please drop them down below. Um, and I'll try to respond as much as I can and try to give you guys, the aspect of what I'm trying to do here with this too, as well as giving us, a nice place where we can actually take a look at things. I wouldn't take a look at things, but actually breakdowns, finding that next guy, you know, off the waiver wire, just the trending things that I kind of wanted to put together for when it comes to college fantasy football, because a lot of it's all kind of all over the place. You have to go to website to website to, finding what you need. And I kind of wanted to put this together for, as a good resource for everybody. Um, but yeah, other than that, I think that kind of gives you guys a rundown on the website. I'm still working on this as much as I can to keep things updated, trying to tweak things as much as possible. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys like it? Do you guys don't like it? Is there something that's missing, or is it too complicated, or is it the information, maybe not correct, or is, just let me know in the comments what you guys think, of this overall in general. Um, but yeah, other than that, let me go back here. There we go. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I appreciate all your comments and stuff like that when it comes to um, me going solo. So it's kind of my first solo gig, I guess you can say. I wouldn't say gig, but kind of voicing my own opinion when it comes to college fantasy football and whatnot. And so it's something I'm going to be working through. I might, I'm going to progress. This one might be a little sloppy, but and these are going to be the bumps and bruises that I'm going to be going through. And if you guys got any insights or points or anything like that, hey, put them out there too. I mean, I'm not objected to um, something to take a look at, and do a little bit. It'll help me too as well. And going forward, things will get better off. And, as far as me presenting things to you, how I wanted things to be put out there in that aspect. So, I mean, if you guys can, make sure you subscribe to the channel, follow me on the CFF Plainsman over there on X. And if you guys can, give me a like and a share. I mean, and this is going to be my first solo episode, but I do appreciate everyone if who are watching, the guys that are freaking into college fantasy football, that this can be at least somewhat helpful for you guys. But other than that, I don't think I really have anything else to say. So I'm going to try to get this uploaded, put it out there, and hopefully it's a good turnout. Other than that, I will probably see you guys in the next one. So we appreciate you locking in with the CFF Plainsman, and now so go win your guys, go win your leagues. All right. And if I can figure out how to work StreamYard.